Okay, you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay. Okay, welcome to 20-Minute Talks with me. I'm Ben. It's where I talk to people that are more interesting than me about things that I want to talk about. Today, a little backstory on why I have this particular person is a couple things. I had an aunt a number of years ago. She passed away from a seemingly really treatable cancer. And the reason that she passed away is because she wasn't healthy enough to have the treatment that would have saved her life. Of course, we're all familiar with COVID, with the coronavirus, and we're all hearing about how the people that are dying from it are the people that are, susceptible to these things and maybe are outside of the age range. Basically, the talk I want to have today is not a lecture to be healthy, because we all know that that's kind of the idea, but I want to talk about why maybe it's difficult to be healthy enough to stay in these treatable ranges. And I also want to kind of touch on how do we get in that window of healthiness and stay there for as long as we can. And so today I have Dr. Bizzy Riley, Bizzy, one of the greatest names ever. And she didn't get the email where I told her that she has to wear a white lab coat and a stethoscope.
I don't wear that.
She loses all credibility because she doesn't have those two things. Bizzy is a naturopathic primary care provider with a focus in mental health and women's health. She's the owner of the naturopathic clinic in Issaquah, the founding member of the Naturopathic Academy of Primary Care Physicians, on the board of the Washington Association of Naturopathic Physicians.
Previously, I just want to clarify, previously was on the board. I am not currently.
Did you get fired or?
That's another story for another day.
Well, then are we still a delegate then to the American Association of Naturopathic Physicians?
No, you told me to send you my credentials.
I'm just reading right off the credentials. Okay, well, one thing I do know, you are a mother of two amazing boys.
That I am.
You are the wife of a super manly man, like stoic, soft-spoken, badass dude.
Yes.
The whole family are avid outdoorsmen. And basically, I want to know, because I learned a lot in looking and talking with you and looking you up, what does a naturopathic doctor do? Why is it different than what we think of a traditional doctor? So why are you better than everyone?
Okay, so I definitely want to clarify that I don't think I'm better than everybody. I love what I do. It's a good fit for me, but I kind of joke with all my patients that I'm definitely not a good fit for everybody. And you would think after 15 years of practice that I would have a really good elevator speech for you about this is what naturopathic medicine is. But really what it comes down to is it's common sense medicine. Like all medicine originally was naturopathic medicine. Like Dr. Bastier, who was the person for whom the school up in this area, the naturopathic school is named after, he said naturopathic medicine is whatever it takes. And I really like that philosophy. I like that way of addressing it. So it's really about treating people as individuals. It's really about working with the body's ability to heal itself and supporting that as much as possible. It's about using all the tools in your toolbox. I don't have judgment about where the tool comes from, but it's just a matter of evaluating its risks and benefits. It's about using natural tools if you can. But when I originally went to naturopathic school, I think I had this image in my head that I would be just treating everything with herbs and supplements instead of using pharmaceuticals, right?
That was my idea up to a couple days ago.
Totally. And I think I disappoint a lot of people when they come through my door because that's definitely not how I approach things. It's really about using a process to address people, but not always having a formula. So it's just a really it's a common sense way of practicing medicine.
So let me ask you this then. What would you say is the biggest problem? Because healthcare here in America is different than just about everywhere else, seemingly.
Yeah.
And there's lots of problems we can talk about. They're probably their own 2-hour segment. There's those healthcare costs. There's big pharmaceutical companies getting involved, and does that drive decisions on how we medicate? Do we medicate for symptoms instead of what's the problem? From what your experience and what you see, what do you think are some of the biggest issues with medicine now?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, what might be relevant might not necessarily be what's a problem in the big system, because I am a smaller town physician with my head down, like just trying to see my patients
Right.
and run my business. And so I don't feel like I'm always like previously when I was a little bit more politically active in my past roles that you mentioned. But I haven't been super involved for like the last 8 years. So what I see is I think there's a real lack of transparency. And we talked about this a little bit more, how important I think it is to like stand in your truth and speak your truth, even if that's not always the most comfortable thing.
Right.
I think that is just lacking so severely in medicine. I think for a lot of us who take insurance, especially like I feel really beholden to insurance companies that I'm contracted with because I really want to keep my medicine accessible to people. And when you go to cash only, it's like you either basically don't make your overhead or
Right.
you end up charging enough money that you sort of weed out people that can't afford to pay cash for their health care.
Sure.
And it makes it so that it's way less accessible. And I think that's a real tragedy. And I think for me, because I do take a lot of insurances in my practice, I try to be as honest as I can be with coding. And what that means is that I code for in like a half-hour visit what MDs code for in primary care in 5 minutes. And so it's like, we're not sitting down and taking the time to be with our patients because we don't get paid to do that.
Right.
And I'm not saying I'm not like a hero for doing that or whatever. I just do what I do. I make enough money. I'm very grateful for what I do. But like, we aren't, our system isn't set up to actually give people the attention they need to treat the whole person. And it's like, you can't just throw medications at a symptom in 5 minutes and send the person out the door for the most part, because people are more complicated than that. Like our urinary tract doesn't exist in isolation from every other system, right? Like,
Right.
And so I think what's really hard is that we don't know where our healthcare dollars are coming from and where they're going. And I definitely know there's a lot more money we're all spending on our health insurance than we're getting back out of it, right?
Right.
And so it's not a system that's set up to really honor what patients need. Even in maybe for specialists that's a little bit different, but I think in primary care it is a real tragedy. And I would also say, like, on the flip side of that, for me, I'm a naturopathic physician, so like I use a lot of supplements in my practice, and I think there's so much bullshit in natural medicine out there too, and it's like deeply shameful to me on both sides, because I think people are not being honest up front about like what people actually need versus what you can get someone to pay for. I think there's so much crap being sold in the supplement industry. I think that people want to have magical thinking about like, oh, if I just took this pill, like all of my problems would go away, and it's natural, so it's great. And it's like, that is almost never true. And I just think there's like a lot of baloney on both sides, where I just don't think practitioners are being 100% honest with their patients. And that makes it so the patients can't be honest with us, right?
Right.
So there's just a lack of transparency, in my opinion.
So also going back to like the supplement things and as a naturopathic doctor, you're going to get people that coming into your practice expecting that. So I bet even, people might even be more skeptical going into a traditional doctor, but when they come to you, they're expecting to get like a shake with berries and twigs in it. And so they would almost buy anything that you wanted. And I'm sure, you being honest aren't taking advantage of that, but my goodness, you have a display of whatever in a jar. That's an easy sell because people are looking to get sold it. Yeah.
And to me, that's an abuse of your, like, I don't know if it's like a position of power, but it's like if someone's paying you for your opinion, right, you are abusing that if you are overselling people on products or like, so it is. And I joke all the time. Like I disappoint everybody that comes through my door. Like all my new patients are expecting me to like magically give them supplements and then everything and like take them off of all their medications. And like, that's not how our bodies work, right, and that's just not, even under the best of circumstances. I think people that are like, I cure this and I cure that are not being 100% honest about like the process that it takes for people to be well, right, and get well. And it's not always possible for people to have that like optimal state of health. Like you're not always going to get there, there are a lot of factors.
That leads in well too, is that people are always, because of the way that our system's set up, people are coming in to have you look or treat their symptom. And the symptom is usually, it's a symptom because it's showing something else wrong in the body. The symptom is the flag. And so if we're just taking the flag and throwing it out, that's not helping us health-wise.
Right.
So philosophically speaking, coming to you and, coming to somebody like you and setting up a plan of health, and every individual is different, as opposed to going to a traditional doctor where they're they're taking, okay, well, you have a cough, let's fix the cough, or you have low blood pressure, let's give you some medicine,
Right.
or high blood pressure. I mean, we're just thinning the blood or making it thinner. We're not addressing the cholesterol that's making it the issue.
Right.
So we have to take control of our own health, and we have to know what we're doing. And by coming to you or coming to somebody that cares, you get a baseline for what's going on personally, and then you move forward from there.
Well, and I want to be like, I also disappoint people in that, like, I never badmouth like MDs versus NDs, like medical doctors or naturopathic doctors. I see an MD, a traditional medical doctor, for my primary care provider. Like, I am extremely grateful for standard medicine. It has saved my life. And I would never, like, I think anyone that says that everything can be treated naturally is ignorant or a spoiled brat. Honestly, it's like people that have not had to manage things that are complicated enough or severe enough that you know, for the most part, that you have needed to rely on like traditional standard medicine. So I think there are incredible MDs out there that like really take the time. Like some of the people, the doctors that are specialists that I refer to, like Dr. Gretchen Crittenden at Overlake, she's a cardiologist. Like I have some specialists that are like, take so much time with their patients, you know, and so it's not just naturopaths at all. And I think there are good doctors that take the time to not just treat symptoms, but I think it's rare. And I think it's rare because that's not how we're trained. And it's not in the model of how we're trained because you can't make money doing it.
Right. And people probably, you know, in the same way that people, we talked about politics before we hit record here, but people probably get into politics to do the right thing. You know, the idea is to let's fix things, and then you get washed up and brainwashed and overwhelmed with corruption. People don't get into medicine to make, you know, to go in there and make a killing on people. The idea to get into medicine is to help people. And I could see how a system you get in and it just overloads you and overwhelms you about before you're clocking in, you're making money and you go home. And I could see how that would, you know, be an overwhelming system.
It's like any other business. It's like, I don't know shit about running a business, right? So like I went out there and hung out my shingle and like started seeing patients. Like, I don't know, I'm not a financial wizard. I mean, I've learned like every other business I've learned as I go along, right? I mean, so you kind of, I can understand why people get into a model. And there are a lot of people marketing to doctors, like learn how to make your business more successful, you know, more patients per hour and everything. I just don't know that it's a great model for actually managing patients. So in my opinion, and I mean, I think there are a lot of models of a lot of ways of doing it.
So, you know, I think we've seen the movies where the big pharmaceutical company is pushing a pill and it goes into a doctor's office. And if you sell so many of these, you get a trip or something like that. Does that really happen in doctor's office or to some extent?
I have only a few drug reps that like come around and sell meds to me. So I can't speak to that. Okay. I mean, I think that in every business there's manipulation, and I see it in the supplement industry very much also. I mean, maybe there's a little bit less harm that can be done with some of the nutrients and herbs, like you're less likely to harm yourself. So, but really I think it's in every industry there are people that are manipulative, right? I mean, but I use a ton of pharmaceuticals in my practice. I prescribe pharmaceuticals every day. So I don't judge. It's not about the tool, it's how you use the tool. It's how it's applied and how you're assessing the patient and whether or not it's a good fit. So I'm not anti-pharmaceutical. I think the industry is pretty corrupt, but it's an industry that I'm also really grateful for, right? It's like, so it's really complicated for me. And I don't want my patients to be tethered to a medication for the rest of their life. But like you were speaking to, like treating symptoms, you know, it's like if someone comes in with sky high blood pressure and I'm seeing them as a new patient, I'm not sending them out the door without a prescription for a blood pressure medication. Right. And we may spend a ton of time working on underlying contributing factors and hopefully addressing those. But like, that's terrible medicine if I'm not managing that symptom in the moment, right? Like there's a difference between like only addressing symptoms. Right. There's a difference between that and alleviating symptoms while you're really working on the underlying.
Essentially putting pressure on the wound while we figure out what's going on.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So I know that, again, like I'm kind of disappointing in that way because it's all tools. It's all about how you use it, you know?
I think even if the power went out now, and we talked about nothing else, the fact that I think that me and all three of my viewers would know that you don't have to decide between a traditional doctor that has medicine and this person that's going to do a witch's spell for you. Right. The fact that you are okay with both, and I'm assuming that's probably pretty popular. It just goes to show what I didn't know going in. And for that, I'm grateful to talk to you because.
Well, sorry.
No.
Yeah.
I was running out.
I appreciate you like asking that question because it's a really common misconception. I mean, I had it myself going into this field. And I think there are a lot of doctors out there that are more and more like open to really looking at that big picture.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's a little complicated because I'm constantly straddling that line with a foot in both worlds. And so a lot of times specialists, I think this is happening less and less, but certainly when I was starting out, if I would call a specialist to consult about a patient, I would get a lot of pushback and a lot of like talking down. And I think the nice thing about Washington State, because we're licensed here, is that it's a lot more accepting that naturopaths are a part of the medical community here. So there's like a lot more, a lot more effort on everybody's part to kind of help the patient get better, which is what it's all about.
So you probably get some patient pushback, right? When you go in, you find a problem, and you say, hey, you need medicine. Yep. And I bet I'm here because I don't want that, because there's probably a misconception as to what they came in there for also.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've had, one of the reasons that I'm not going to say the name because then people are going to go look for this, but okay. Some of the online review companies, shall we say, I've had people leave reviews of me on there about, I remember this one about something horrible happened to my mom because Dr. Bizzy treated her and she had diabetes and then she had to lose her toe. And I remember this patient, I read this Yelp review, I almost threw up. I put her on insulin and she wanted to cure herself naturally.
Right.
And so she wouldn't use it. And it's like, so that's like a perfect example of like, yeah, I mean, you have to be smart about what you do, right? I mean, you have to really look at, even if the patient doesn't want it, like what the big picture is. But what I always tell people is like, my job is to share information with you. I'm not going to tell you what to do. And if you say you aren't going to do this, I document that. That is your right. Like we all have a right. Ultimately, we're the ones that make our own decision for our health, right? Like a doctor can tell you anything and it doesn't mean anything if it doesn't resonate with you. So I totally like, I've been wrong plenty of times. You know what I mean? I've made the wrong call plenty of times.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So meat and potatoes, kind of what we like.
Yeah.
So what are some things, so we all know that to stay healthy, we have to diet and exercise. There's people that really understand that and they get exactly what they mean. They can meal prep themselves and stuff, but there's a lot of people that, what do I do? Like, what are the things that I need? So how do people stay in that range of health to where if something comes up, cancer comes up, another COVID outbreak or something like that, how do we stay in that window? And it's not about getting shredded in a beach body, but it's about being healthy enough to where everything is treatable. What are some things that you do for your family that maybe not everyone knows that is something important that people should do moving forward?
Yeah. So I think, the most important thing that I think we all know to do is to actually take some time to listen to what we need. Like, it doesn't matter how many times I tell somebody, like, you need to work out a certain, right. I do. I think everybody needs to exercise in some way. But, like, most people know when something is off and they distract themselves from it. It's like, we all know that if you eat Twinkies for breakfast, you feel like shit, right?
Right.
And believe me, I've eaten so many Twinkies in my life. Like, I'm not judging. I don't judge people. Like, I'm an eater, not a judger. But like, right. It's like, I think fundamentally you have to start with like being willing to make some choices and actually listening to how your body feels when you make those choices. Really, like, that's the biggest fundamental thing. So I know that's not what you're asking, but I do think that is a big part of it, is like, we all love to ignore what we know we need to do, right? I think our bodies are really built to do hard work. And there is not a single person alive that doesn't benefit from some amount of exercise. And that is so different for everybody. And health is different for everybody, right? But like, because for some people, that's like very gentle stretching and meditation. And for you and I, that's like pounding our heads against the wall.
Right.
So that we feel good. I mean, like, there's a lot of different degrees of that. But I do.
We get from lifting that the other people are getting from meditation. The same thing too.
Yeah, I do. I think that could be true, but I do think our bodies are made to do physical work. Like, right. Human beings have evolved to this point by being physically active. I think we all know, like, not being active at all. So that is really important. And I care about that because there's almost nothing I treat that doesn't get better with movement and some exercise, right?
Yeah.
Like almost every disease is prevented with, so like some form of movement is important. And I think the other thing that we're really, really missing out on these days is sleep. Like, and I'm a terrible sleeper. So, and you have a baby. Sorry that I'm such an asshole. But like I'm a terrible sleeper. So I'm the first one to admit that it's like, it's rotten, but it is like, it is bad for your body long term, not like baby, you know, a year.
Right. Well, I don't sleep anyway.
But it is important. I mean, and like,
Why?
I think
Why is
because your body does a lot of, and that doesn't mean you have to sleep 10 hours a night. Like for you, that might be 5 hours a night. You get 5 super solid hours, like you might be fine.
Okay.
But I think that a lot of our recovery processes happen when we are in deep sleep. A lot of the hormones that we make that help us with tissue repair, we make in deep sleep. I think like for mood stabilization, like a lot of pieces of the puzzle are benefited by deep sleep. I mean, does that mean that like you're going to die early because you don't sleep? Probably not, honestly. But I just think like honoring what that recovery, and maybe part of that is also that maybe it's a stress reliever for some people, because I think our lives are so busy. I'm not just saying this because I'm trying to give you advice, but our lives are so busy. We never stop. We never, you know, right. I mean, this is true for all of us. We're cranking, you know, on all hours of the day. And I think having that deep sleep for recovery is really important. So yeah.
You mentioned, you glossed over it a couple times, and it was actually and kind of going over your stats, seeing that you are a mental health professional too. What role does that play in, like we all know about nutrition and exercise?
Yeah.
Is that third cog in that wheel? Is that mental health and clarity? And how do you find?
Yeah. Well, I actually
find that
there are supposed to be. I'm supposed to remember what these foundations of health are, like exercise, diet, sleep, fresh air, water, hydration, maybe. I mean, technically, I think those are the things I usually talk about. But mental health wise, I think one of the really interesting things is that I don't think, I know there are people that say like antidepressants don't do anything, and if you just exercise enough and you eat right, you'll be perfect. And I would say, I think that's great if that works for people, and I always start there, but it's a little bit of a fantasy too. But I think you'll really find that, like, I mean, not for everybody is what I mean.
Yeah.
Not for everybody, some people. But I think what you'll find is like a lot of people with anxiety, this is an example, a lot of people with anxiety, you'll find like they go a little bit too long between eating, and what happens is when your blood sugar drops, your cortisol spikes, and cortisol is a stress hormone. And so a lot of people who have chronic anxiety, like, they actually do a lot better by eating a little bit more consistently.
So that's where you're doing the 5 or 7 small meals a day kind of thing, or okay.
If it works for you, or just like not, you know, those are people that maybe if they're in ketosis, they do intermittent fasting, they feel awesome. But if you're not in ketosis and people are like, I'm going to do intermittent fasting, like if you're not getting into ketosis, your blood sugar is dropping, you're just cranking stress hormones all day long. Like a lot of us drink too much coffee. I can't remember. Do you drink coffee?
No.
Oh, you're so good. Like a lot of us drink too much coffee.
How good am I?
Is that a caffeinated beverage?
It's a Bang energy drink, and I love it.
You don't sleep. Oh my God. Okay. But a lot of us, like, you know, we drink, and I'm guilty of this too. Like I will wake up, I will like pound a coffee and get going. Like I feel so good. Maybe not, you know, if I don't eat consistently, then we have another coffee, and then it gets to be like 1 or 2 p.m. and we feel terrible because that caffeine is worn off. We're cranking stress hormones. We're super hungry. Like being more consistent throughout the day tends to be a little bit more nourishing for people. That doesn't mean you can't do intermittent fasting and like get your nutrition in there. But for a lot of people, like that's just an example of paying attention. And what's interesting about that is that that's another example of like, you have to do that on an individual basis. Like there is no one way of eating that's perfect for everybody, right? Other than like, I think we all need to eat as many fresh fruit as we can and vegetables, blah, blah, blah. But like,
I'm so glad you said that actually, because something I was kind of thinking, I hope I remember to bring it up. Fresh fruits and vegetables.
Okay.
Organic, right? I realize why it's important. I really do. Is it, we've talked about even the cost point about it and why it makes it, there's so many people, you can't mass produce organic food for everyone. That's why everyone's like, why is it so more expensive for organic food? It's because there's less of it. Yeah. So let's just say that you are kind of, with everything going on, maybe you're not working, but it's still important. Are there some things that you would put, like, it's important to get these things organic? And I guess I can just start by asking you, is organic that important?
I mean, I think organic is ideal, but I think it's unrealistic for a lot of people because of the price point. And that is a whole, like, I could go off on that for like hours, but just FYI, one of the reasons why it's so much more expensive is that conventionally grown food is heavily subsidized by our government.
Yeah.
And it makes it a lot more accessible. And so I think it's important because I do think overall, like, we all have a much heavier toxic load than people did probably 50 years ago, like our exposures to plastics and all that stuff, which gets in our food. But so things that I'm a bit picky about, if it's doable financially, are actually dairy and meat products, making sure that those are grown clean and that those are grown hormone free.
Okay.
Just because the amount of hormone and pesticide that you can get in a fat-based product is a little bit higher, in my opinion. And so you're going to be absorbing, like, for people that drink milk, like if you're drinking conventional milk, you're getting a pretty good hormone load. And so I'm a bit pickier about dairy products and meat. And I'm not like judgmental. If you don't want to eat meat, that's fine. If you do, that's fine.
I was actually going to ask you about that. I mean, is there any? You're probably going to say it's an individual thing too, but vegetarianism, is it good for you? It's probably so individual, but do you subscribe to the fact that being a vegetarian is healthy or not healthy?
Are you trying to get me like hate people to like throw like rotten produce at my store?
Nobody's going to see this. Nobody. Don't even worry about that.
By the way, I was one of your watchers, so you actually have 2 people out there that are going to watch this.
Okay, perfect.
You know what? I think it's individual. I think what's inarguable is that we have to eat a lot more fresh food. And I think eating more high fiber foods that are fresh, like fruits and vegetables, is like powerful for everybody. I know there's some really good research on a vegetarian diet versus a meat-based diet. My husband and I have actually had some seriously heated arguments about this because he recently watched, what's the documentary that's come out recently? It'll come to me, but it was basically like these athletes that switched to a non-animal product diet and like their performance improved.
Even the weightlifters, like, surprisingly, right? Yeah, I saw that too. I don't remember the name either, but
I haven't watched it because it caused a lot of fights in my marriage. But I'll tell you what I do think is that any nutrition research can be manipulated. Any research can be manipulated. So I don't know what's better. Like, I can tell you what I do, but I don't know what's perfect for people. But I think that the possibility exists that you could eat a vegetarian diet that is an absolute pile of shit. And I think you could eat a diet that includes meat products that is really healthy and balanced. So it's like, I have seen some of the least healthy patients I have seen have been vegetarians. And I think it's because a lot of us, it's hard. It takes a lot more prep. You have to be a lot more conscious about your nutritional intake. Right. And if you're not educated about it, you could eat like ice cream and potato chips all day long, and you could still be eating a vegetarian, well, I guess not ice cream. You could eat like vegan ice cream. Yeah. But my point is that I think you could take whatever style feels right to you and you could optimize it. I think it's inarguable that we all need to be eating a lot more fresh food.
So there's other things out there too. Like the 2 things I wanted to kind of wrap up, and I won't drag it on too long, but I want to talk about one of the biggest things I keep hearing about, and it's run through our family too, is food sensitivity test. Yeah. Is that an effective tool to start out if you're starting out and you want to find out what's healthy? Would you recommend getting a food sensitivity test and kind of starting there?
I just want you to be prepared to be disappointed in my answer.
I'm open-minded. I'm ready for anything.
As am I. So I use that test in my practice. I have a certain test that I run that's like a 96 food sensitivity panel. I don't think you need to spend money on testing to start to explore what is good for you and what's not, because what that test does, so I want to make sure I answer your question, but just as a side note, what that test does is it's looking for antibodies in your bloodstream to identifiable food proteins. So typically, if you have a healthy gut, when you eat food, your digestive system is going to break it down into such fine particles that by the time it gets accepted, like to go through to your bloodstream, right, it's just the building blocks. It's amino acids, it's sugars, it's carbohydrates. It's nothing that has like an identifiable food protein on it. So technically, with a really healthy gut, you shouldn't have antibodies to anything that you eat, right? We know not most of us have some gut issues, right?
So what do we do? So then scrapping that,
right?
You hate it.
Right.
What do we do?
No, I don't. I'll tell you where to
Yeah,
look. But yeah, how do you figure out what's right for you?
what gut health? Let's just start with gut health.
Yeah.
Like what do you recommend? Is there anything you do for that, or is that all diet?
Totally. Are you kidding? Now, we're the one stereotype that's true about naturopaths is that we love treating your gut. We are like obsessed with people's digestive system, but it really is like the root of your health. You know, I mean, I say this as someone who has like an inherited digestive disease. Like, it is really, really important. So like, because about 80% of your immune system is actually associated with your digestive system.
Yeah,
And
wow.
so keeping your gut healthy and your gut immunity healthy is actually really powerful for the rest of your body. And I'm not like, you know, realistically, if you treat the gut, everything doesn't get better. But I will tell you that a lot of stuff does get better. So like basic gut health is like, first of all, what you're feeding it. Like, are you feeding it stuff that's like killing off good bacteria and feeding bad bacteria? So lots of fiber, lots of fresh food. Love probiotics. I love fish oil for the gut. I mean, there are some products that I think actually can really enhance your gut, but a lot of it is about figuring out what you're doing that's causing problems.
Right.
And replacing that with something that doesn't. And that is trial and error. So like, to circle back to the dietary recommendation thing, like, you really have to try on different diets to see what fits you.
Okay.
And the one time I do use that test, just as a side note, is if you do that test and you come up positive to a ton of different foods, that's a really good confirmation that your gut is really inflamed.
So not specifically the foods that show up on the test, but it's having trouble with a lot of what you're putting into it.
Yeah, because what's happening is all the stuff you're eating the most isn't getting broken down well enough. It's crossing that inflamed barrier, and then your immune system is showing reactivity to it. So it does help to remove those foods. But if you heal the gut and you repeat the test, then you'll really see what you're making an immune reaction to. If you don't heal the gut and you remove those foods, if you repeat the test 8 weeks later, you're going to just show positive to all the other foods you're now eating. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, in kind of summation, it's all pretty obvious stuff. And so all it comes down to, like, the gut health thing was really interesting because, you know, we're putting everything into this. So we clean up our food. Obviously, we drink a lot of water. We get some movement in. It doesn't have to be super strenuous. Get outside.
For sure.
And these are things that people are eye rolling at. And I don't know who, for me, the longevity of my life became more important when you're adding value to it with your children.
Totally.
Having been through a thing where my grandfather passed away recently, 90 years old, and was able, because of his health and strength, got a couple more months out of it. And that became so valuable because he was ready to have a treatment that he otherwise wouldn't able to, and he kind of miraculously came through them cutting out part of his intestine, and they're like, oh my gosh, he's going to be okay for a little bit longer. Yeah. He went home. People came to visit him. He got to spend that last month, and he went to sleep and didn't wake up.
That's
so you are basically starting now. You know, you're looking to increase that window, that treatable window, so you can be there, cognizant, mentally aware, as long as you can for your family, for your children. So there's a lot of eye rolls. I don't like to work out. But let's fix the diet. Let's get outside. Let's move around, and just little things like that you can build on.
Yeah.
Add maybe a pretty valuable, even a month to the end, and that's worth it.
Oh yeah. And you know, one thing that I'm hearing in what you're saying, and I think this is really common, is like, you know, if you try to be perfect about everything, you do the cleanest diet, you work out 5 days a week, you know, what you will find 90% of the time is it won't be lasting for you.
Right.
And basically what ends up happening is, like, people feel, I'm not talking about you specifically, that's later, but like, you feel like crap about yourself, and then you're up and down and up and down. And what I really find is, like, small changes go a super long way. I mean, people always say, like, oh, you take the stairs instead of taking the elevator. But seriously, if you take the stairs every day instead of the elevator, that really adds up. Like, you don't have to become a marathon runner. I just want you outside moving your body 15 minutes at least a few times a week. Because most people, once they start doing that, they're going to like it. You know,
you're going to build on it. Just keep the arrow moving in the right direction. It doesn't have to. Yeah.
And it's because it's more important that you create a habit. Like I always say, unless someone's in a really, really bad state of health, like, let's create a plan that you will still be doing in 5 months, and you're perfectly fine doing it. It's not going to be so hard for you that you're just going to be like, this lady's crazy and you're going to go off and do something else. It's like, I'd rather find moderation with people in a way that's like every single day lasting. So like, maybe that means you go to bed a half hour earlier. If you add up an extra half hour of sleep in your whole entire life, that is a ton of sleep. Right. And so like little changes are so valuable. I don't think it should be all or nothing, because that doesn't last for people.
Right.
In my opinion. So yes, yes, I want people to clean up their diets, and yes, I want them to exercise. And I think all of those things are great, but I think it's important to be realistic about like what's doable for people, because for some people, like eating cleaner and cooking more is adding more stress to them. And so for those people, it's like, then go to Trader Joe's and buy a salad 3 days a week, or like whatever. You don't want to do these changes that cause more stress for people, because that just ends up shooting yourself in the foot.
And that's that other cog, the mental health part, and you're ruining that, robbing Peter to pay Paul, essentially.
Exactly.
Bizzy.
Ben.
You did it. I gotta be honest with you. I probably could have gone a million different ways. I love talking to you. Thank you so much. And like, there's information that I'm gonna take from that. I love the idea about just moving, because I can individually overwhelm myself with the things that I want to do and I want to be.
Yeah.
I need to remember just to keep going forward.
Yeah.
And even if it's a week that's not as productive athletically as I would like, have I walked around the block? Have I cleaned up the diet a little bit? Just great information. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Bizzy.
I'm so honored. I mean, I am so honored to get to talk to you on here. And I told you I was going to mouth off, so sorry if I talk a little bit.
No, I love it. I love it. There's too much bad words to even edit out, so I'm going to leave them in there.
Like 3 times. I only swore like 3 times.
So, okay. Well, thank you, and I will see you and your kids very soon. And,
yes, I think so.
Again, thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much. Say hi to your family for me.